I'm Darian Alexis, and welcome to a 20-something survival guide, the place where you and me learn to survive and thrive in our 20s and beyond. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of I'm Pregnant, Now What? The episodes where we're talking about being pregnant as well as life with newborns in our 20s. As on our last episode, I'm Darian Alexis, and with us is my beautiful friend Kayla, who is a new mom with all of the best tips for pregnancy. So if you haven't tuned in to part 1, be sure to do so. And if you're just tuning in for part 2, that's okay as well, because in this part, we're going to be talking about newborn life and some postpartum tips. So, Kayla, would you like to briefly introduce yourself again?
Sure. Hi again. Welcome back. If you didn't hear before, my name is Kayla, and I am a 26-year-old first-time mom.
Yay! Okay, perfect. So, we're talking all about newborn life, which is what you are in the midst of right now. So, what was it like adjusting to life with a newborn?
It was definitely shocking. I feel like it was just like a whole entire life shock. Um, when like that first night that we brought our newborn home, it was very exciting and we were full of love and just cherished this little baby, but we also have never done this before and have never had a human before. So it was very scary. There were so many emotions going through our brains that we didn't know what to do. Um,
Yeah.
that part was very shocking, but we just took it little by little and day by day, and we just like had fun with our little girl, and that's what made up for it, for the scary times.
During those first few days, were there like any surprises that caught you off guard with bringing home a newborn?
Sure. So I think a lot of people hear that babies don't sleep very well, but you don't really understand it as well until you're going through it. And so, Addie, the first couple days, which we are very blessed that she ended up sleeping really great right away, but those first couple days, we were up until 3 a.m. with a newborn baby. We're still navigating learning how to take care of her, so we had no idea how to calm this little girl who is crying until 3 in the morning, so that was definitely surprising. And then I decided to breastfeed, and so those first couple days of breastfeeding was very scary and hard to navigate. There's like pressure of if she's going to latch on correctly. I was constantly worrying how she's latching, if she's doing it the right way, if she's getting enough milk. There's the pressure of how my milk flow is. Am I even giving enough to her? So to go through that right away was also very surprising and scary.
And was like your doctor helpful during this time? Did you talk to your mom or did you do your research on Google and stuff like that? Because I would not even know how to get a baby to latch on.
Sure. So, yes, I did research a little bit while I was still pregnant, but it was hard for me to grasp. So I didn't really like take to the information very well because I
Yeah.
didn't like understand it at all because I wasn't going through it. Um,
Hmm.
so after I delivered Addie, right away they had a lactation consultant come in and kind of just showed me how to or how to help her latch and different ways I can hold her to help. So that was helpful. My mom was helpful. Not really with like tips, but just being there as support. Then like Addie and I, after that, after the doctor's advice, we kind of just had to learn from each other and like learn as we went each day and each feeding.
I know you have to feed every few hours, but were there any things that you learned during the first few weeks that became routine and the listeners should be aware of?
Sure. So yeah, just like you said, a newborn baby, and even babies following in the months as they grow, will feed every 2 hours. Some of the times change just depending on your baby and you. But having that as a routine definitely helped, especially those first couple days. Our hospital and our doctor gave us a literal sheet to fill out of her feeding times, when she ate, when she needs to eat again. So we kept track of that very often, and that helped a lot. And then she slept a lot those first couple days. So there was like no nap times really right away. But once she started like staying awake longer, having longer wake windows, I was starting to get used to her sleepy cues and like her rubbing her eyes or yawning or just looking a little bit more fussy. So once I really got a hang of her cues, we got into a routine of her taking a nap at a certain time, then eating, and then after that it became a really awesome routine of she eats and then she plays and then she sleeps, and we just did that over and over and over. And another piece of advice that I have, in addition to creating a routine with your baby, just remembering that when there are times that you just get like thrown through the ringer, your baby is doing something completely out of routine, you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they want, and you're just starting to get really frustrated. Something that I heard that I really took to heart was to just take a look at their tiny little features and look at their hands, look at their little nose, look at their eyes, their mouth, and just think about how tiny and fragile they are and how they're never going to be that size and that little baby again. And even though it's really hard to think about that in the moment, trying to think about it and knowing that they're only this tiny for so long, I think helps get through those frustrating times.
Oh, that's so sweet. And that's so true. I've never thought about it that way. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Can you share some must-have baby products or hacks that made life easier for you?
Sure. So I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm just not thinking of at the time, but ones that come to my mind right away are all about breastfeeding and pumping, because to me, at least in my experience, that takes the hardest toll on you as a mom. And so some products that I love is a Haka, and that's like a silicone like manual breast pump, but you don't even have to pump it. It just like suctions on to you and it helps collect milk like as you're nursing, or just if you have a lot of extra milk, it helps collect that. So that's awesome. I love that. I would highly recommend a Haka. I actually have one right here. Highly recommend a nursing cover. It can be any brand, but a very specific one that is like closed in all the way around, because there are nursing covers and receiving blankets out there that will do the job, but for me, I was always afraid of like it slipping off, or my daughter loves to like yank at things, so she was always yanking it off. So with a nursing cover like this, it just stays around you and just really gives you that privacy if you want it. So I highly recommend that. And the last thing that I am obsessed with also has to do with pumping mostly, but I highly, highly recommend a sterilizer. You can use any sterilizer, but I have a Dr. Brown sterilizer. I recommend that because I did not realize how every single thing that you use for breastfeeding or pumping needs sterilized, not just washed, not just rinsed or cleaned really well, it needs to be sterilized. And to sterilize something, you can just boil it at a very high temperature, like to kill all the germs and bacteria. And that's fine, and that'll do the job. However, they have to air dry. I think it's probably just better for like bacteria to not continue to build on it, but you cannot just like take a paper towel and dry it off. So that's really time consuming. And with a sterilizer, I just wash all my pump parts, wash whatever I have to sterilize, put it in there, and it essentially just fills with really, really hot steam that will do the same exact job, but it also will dry it for you. It has a drying mode that just makes the process so much faster. So I highly recommend that as well. I don't know what I would do if I had to just sterilize on my own.
That's awesome. I would have never known that. And I could imagine that with all the breastfeeding, that's so helpful, especially you mentioned before, babies feed every 2 hours.
Yes.
I cannot imagine. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Waking up in the middle of the night every 2 hours.
Yes.
But if you just pump, then, your husband can help you out or your partner can help you out
That is
with that
true.
process.
Something that I do want to say, like you just reminded me, that I think it would be helpful information for first time moms to know. Not only do they feed every 2 hours, it's important to know that it's every 2 hours from the start of like the time they latched on. So it's not 2 hours after they're done, it's at
Oh.
the beginning. So that's very helpful to know that I didn't know until I already had my baby.
And how long does the feeding process take?
When she was a newborn, like the first couple months, it took a little while. It would be at least a half hour, if not longer.
Holy
Yeah.
crap. I thought it
Yeah.
was like 5 minutes.
No, it was a while. Now that she's a little bit older, she's learned how to eat really efficiently. So it takes like probably 15 minutes max. It's usually like 10. So she got a lot more efficient at it, but in the beginning, it was a while.
Oh my gosh, are you like in pain?
Oh, that's a great. I love that you brought that up because I almost forgot. When you first start, at least for me, I know other like people can be different, but yes, it hurts in the very beginning because your body has never done that before. So it's like really just getting used to it. So it can be pretty painful in the beginning, but it does not last long at all. Like your body gets used to it quick, your baby gets used to it quickly, and it becomes easier as you go.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of emotions and managing those. In our last episode, you spoke a little bit about how you do tend to be more of an anxious person, but when you were pregnant, you were feeling super calm. How were your emotions affected postpartum?
That is a great question. I went back to my regular self, and I definitely feel myself being that same, like, anxious, very worried. In fact, like, unfortunately, I feel like it got a little bit worse because I have I feel like the responsibility of caring for a human being, and so I worry about her a lot. And sometimes it is hard to deal with that worry. Like, I worry about her getting sick. I wonder how, if she's peeing and pooping when she should, and if she's eating enough still. Am I giving her enough food? Did I give her enough pureed solids? And there's just a lot to worry about when you're in charge of somebody's life. And so, to handle that, I like to journal a lot. I have what I call a prayer journal, and I like to just I love to pray, generally, but I also love like the idea of writing it down, and I feel like I can really process what I'm feeling that way writing it down, and I just feel like I'm giving it all to God that way and letting it be, and I know He hears me, and so that's a way that I cope with my worry.
Are there any other tips or strategies that you've utilized that might help the listeners?
I like to like take a break and do something for myself. So even if that means like Addie might be feeling fussy and she has a need that needs met, but I have no idea what it is, and I'm worried about it, and I'm frustrated and struggling without to help her, even if that means I have to put her in her crib where I know she's safe and just take a very short break, even like don't leave her for long, but just take a little break for yourself to breathe, or just like take a quick walk around your house just to breathe and recenter and refocus and come back to her. I think that's really helpful. I think having my husband that I do, he's very, very supportive. So if I need to leave the house or get away or something, he is there to, he'll be on Addie duty and just take care of it and let me go to the gym if I want to go to the gym, just go to the store or just take a little walk. So he's
I
awesome.
love that. Team Anthony. We love Anthony, which segues perfectly into the next question because I was curious how motherhood affected your relationships, both not just with Anthony, but like also with your friends and your family.
I love that question. I would say with Anthony, our relationship, it's like very dynamic because in one part, it feels like we've gotten closer because we definitely have
Hmm.
to work as a team and we feed off of each other's emotions, and we have to take care of responsibilities with the house and with the baby. We have to split those responsibilities together. So we're definitely closer in that way. We have found though that quality time spent together is harder with a baby for sure. It's it's a struggle because we do have that quality time together, but we don't have time to like watch a show or watch a movie until it's like 9 p.m. and she's asleep. And so that kind of, it changed, and we're still navigating that. But we're definitely very close and very supportive of each other. My relationship with my friends, I think, is still very strong. I have great friends and great relationships with them. However, I don't go out and hang out with my friends as much because it's just harder with a baby. So that kind
Very
of sucks.
valid.
But I love my supportive friends, and I know how much they love Addie and how much they welcome Addie. So having to bring her anywhere or something would be perfect. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I know a support system is super, super important with a newborn. Did you want to talk a little bit about your support system at all?
Sure. I feel like a very strong support system, like I said, with Anthony, with my friends, with my family, and with my in-laws. They've all been amazing. They're obsessed with being grandparents.
That's
They
so cute.
I know, it is so cute. They never question when we need them to watch her, and in fact, they just love doing it. They've just been awesome. When I am struggling, the first person I go to in my support system, I would say, would be my mom, and second, my sister. And they are just great to talk to, just to let it out. And even if I want to say, hey, like, I'm not really looking for anything, I just need to like cry something out, they're there. If I do need advice, my mom is always there, and she's great because she's been through it before and she genuinely cares for me and for Addie. So I just feel very blessed to have them as support systems because I don't know if I would be doing so well without them.
That's so sweet. I'm so glad you have a good support system. So the next questions I wanted to ask is there anything you wish you knew before having your baby that you've experienced during the newborn life?
I wish I knew or were like was a little bit more aware about all the pressure that is on you with having a baby. There are so many different opinions out there. You're going to get so many different pieces of advice, like when it even down to like how you're dressing your baby. Do you have socks on your
That's
baby? Do you have enough
wild.
layers on your baby? So I just wish I was a little bit more prepared for the pressures of that and how to navigate that and form my own opinions for how to parent.
That's super, super valid. And is there any advice you have for other moms in their 20s who are navigating this newborn stage?
Sure. I think my biggest piece of advice is that, like, I won't give you any parenting advice because, like I just said, you're going to
Yeah.
want to parent your own way, and there's going to be something you hear that you don't want to hear, or that's going to frustrate you, or you just don't agree with. So I would have to say my biggest piece of advice is just to go with your mom gut and to listen to your baby and do what feels right for you and your baby. And I guess something very specific that I would like to say, advice that I wish I had at the very beginning, is that you cannot spoil your newborn baby. Feel free to hold your baby however long you want, whenever you want. Hold your baby. A baby cannot manipulate you. You cannot spoil them when they are 6 weeks old. So if someone's telling you you should be putting them down at this time, they should be sleeping at this time, blah, 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 just hold them if you feel like they need held, and just love them up if you feel like they need it, because you're their comfort and their support, and if you're doing what you feel is right for your baby, then that's what's best.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
And
of
before we
course.
get going today, is there any other tips or hacks or things that you want to talk about that we haven't had a chance to discuss?
Hmm, that is a good question. I think the only thing I can think of right now that I would recommend is when you are. Oh, I have two, actually. The first one that I was thinking of is when I was shopping on my baby registry for things for the shower, I really liked products that were like a 3-in-1, or, for example, the high chair that we have for her is a 7-in-1, where it can be an infant high chair, but then it can convert to the toddler stage and it can just
Oh,
be like a
nice.
table. And so I really like products like that you don't have to keep buying and buying. You just have it all right there. So I would highly recommend those types of things when you're shopping on your baby registry. And while we're talking about registries, I recommend going to a physical store and testing out the baby products while you can, because nowadays, like what we did, our registry was all online. We could have just, and we did for many things, just added it all right online. And with your baby, they're the most important thing to you in the whole world, and their safety is the most important thing. So I highly recommend going to the store. And like, yes, you can go on YouTube and look at reviews and look at things like that, and that's awesome. But there's just something about like physically going to the store, testing out that stroller, looking at that car seat, looking at the products just to make sure that they are the ones that you really want, that will help your baby the most.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And so, our last question before we get going is the question I ask everyone that comes on the podcast, and that is, what is your number one piece of advice for 20 somethings? So, this is not mom related. This is just your
Oh.
advice as a person for the 20 somethings listening.
I think my number one piece of advice would be something that I think about just from listening to your podcast, is that obviously, and like this is what I love about your podcast, is that as 20 somethings, you can be at so many different stages in life. You can be a mom, you can still be in college, you could be just working, you could be doing so many different things just in your 20s. And I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on people of like, oh, this person that I went to high school with, they're already doing this, or like they're this successful in their job. And it can get really stressful and you might feel down on yourself about that. So I would say my advice is just try to look within your own life and think of the successes that you want to build, and like your success is different than someone else's success. And so I would encourage you to feel happy for those people that you see that feel really successful in their stage of a 20 something, but then I want you to feel proud of the stage that you're in as a 20 something, because you're being very successful too.
That was beautiful, and that is so, so valid. And that is exactly, as you said, why I have this podcast,
Yes.
because the episodes that just released today were about being in college. Now we're talking about being a mom. Very, very different things. And you
Yeah.
can also be a mom while being in college, but there's
Right.
just so many different walks of life we're all in. So I'm glad we can all be here together and talk about it and discuss things. Kayla, thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast. It has been a pleasure learning from you all your mom tips.
Oh,
And
of
I
course.
hope and I hope all the listeners learned a thing or two. If you liked the episode today, make sure to rate the podcast if you haven't already, or subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. To learn more about the podcast, you can find me on Instagram and or TikTok at Darian Diaries.
I had a great time, and thank you so much, Darian, for having me. I'm really glad that I get to share information that will help other moms, and maybe moms in their 20s, and maybe even moms who are not in their 20s. I'm really looking forward to
Yes.
being able to share this information.
Yes, thank you so much. So whether you are currently pregnant, whether you're going to be pregnant in the future, whether you have a newborn, a child, wherever you are in your mom journey, thank you so much for tuning in with us today. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. As always, I'm Darian Alexis, and don't forget to survive and thrive.